The Legions of Athena. Chapter 24. Theseus stood outside the northern gates of Athens, in full battle armor and his great axe already in hand. The champion stared across the plains, which grew redder by the second. Ares had already begun his first charge, and they would clash with him in a few moments. But Theseus was not worried. He was not alone. He had 4 of Athena's 8 legions standing behind him, awaiting his orders. The army had split itself into 4 large battalions, not legion-wise, but as a mix of the 7th, 5th, 4th, and 2nd legions combined. Each of their legion commanders were there too, except for Leos, who had already completed his duty. The 6th legion, consisting of healers and engineers, were inside the city, preparing it for the aftermath of battle. The 3rd legion was inside as well, but they were arming the turrets and city defenses from inside the Aegis, making sure that no one got too close. The 8th and the 1st legions were yet to be deployed, and would only enter the war when it was tactically necessary, as the goddess saw fit. Theseus watched as the war god's army approached closer and closer. He looked back to see his own forces geared up for battle. He wondered if he should say a few words to inspire them. But then he was never good with words. He was more of a man of action. He turned back to see a few Martian soldiers break formation and rush forward even faster than their frontline cavalry. But this was nothing new. He had seen this before. He tightened the grip on his battle axe. The axe was much larger than usual, with a 6-foot-long shaft and a crescent-shaped blade at its head, which extended into a long spike of tempered steel to the back. In his younger days, he had arrogantly named the axe the cattle prod to further enrage the Minotaur race, but he didn't care. He had no sympathy for the horned beasts. Their hatred for him was unchanged, as clearly visible now. For the few soldiers who had broken forward from their ranks to rush into battle were all Minotaurs. No doubt they knew Theseus would be the one leading Minerva in battle, and decided that they would be the ones to avenge the pride of their race. 4 of the hoofed soldiers had already broken far away from their main battalion, and had nearly reached Theseus. The champion couldn't help but think, perfect. A few of the soldiers in front raised their spears and guns to shoot down the Minotaurs, but Theseus raised his axe, signaling them to halt, and moved forward to face them himself. He was not great with words or speeches, but this he could do. The first of the Minotaurs snapped up his neck on seeing Theseus and gave a huge roar. Then he proceeded to bring his enormous club down at the champion, but Theseus was ready. A quick parry to the left, and then slice. The axe had met its mark. The Minotaur no longer held the club. Rather, the soldier no longer had a hand to hold the club with. The beast whelped in pain, and Theseus pulled his axe back, allowing its spiked end to hack straight through its abdomen. The Minotaur was dead. The other 3 flinched at this sight, but whether they would have retreated or pushed on, one would never know, because Theseus was already on them. First, he dug his axe into the skull of a female Minotaur, killing her instantly. Then he turned to the other 2. One of them tried to shoot him down with a machine gun, but it was useless. Guns were as effective as insect bites to demigods. Theseus didn't even flinch when he hacked off the shooter's head clean. The last one had dropped his own gun and decided to ram him with its horns. But Theseus stopped the bull with just one hand. Then with the other, he brought his axe down on its back, smashing the Minotaur to the ground. Theseus walked back to his men as the beast bled to death. As he stared at his men, he knew that what he had done was more inspiring than any speech, but he decided to say some final words. "See how easily the war god bleeds before our might," he shouted. That was enough. Mars's forces had arrived, and they were met with the roar for victory from the legions of Athena. The first day of war had ended with the setting of the sun. This was a rule followed since the ancient times, even during the Titan War. The battles would end at sundown, giving both sides time to gather their fallen and help their injured. That night, hundreds of bodies would be burned with drachmas in their eyes. These were because ancient lore described the money as payment to the gatekeepers of the underworld. There were many who joked that the southernmost continent of Pluto was where all the souls departed to, and that its ruler Don Hades had become the richest man in the world by collecting all these drachmas. Maximus and the others had seen most of the war from the West Tower. The battle formations were broken apart within the first 15 minutes the troops made contact. They had seen how Theseus had taken down a few Minotaurs in the beginning, or rather Rex had seen with his bionic eye. This enraged him to no end, and he started ranting again. The barbarian Diomedes and Theseus had locked horns briefly in battle, but not long enough to claim a victor. They had to stop their battle midway, mainly due to more Minotaurs charging at Theseus. The fighting went on for hours. With no real results, Mars's forces had not broken through the first line of defense yet. The day ended with the Martians retreating to the camp they had built around the Athon, which had landed on the far end of the fields. Neither army had deployed their air units yet. Most of Mars's heavy units had been kept at bay by the large turrets within the city, which created large cavern on the path of the tanks. This also meant that the mecha units hadn't been deployed yet either, much to Hedger's disappointment. That night in the dining area, they were not greeted by Bricks or Goop, but rather 2 Athenian guards who told them they had to shift to the Great Hall, along with all the remaining civilians. All 4 of them were asked to pack up all their belongings and head down to the hall immediately. The great hall was a large room situated on the ground floor of the Owl's Nest, which was used for public gatherings and announcements. The hall was built to easily accommodate 10,000 people and had giant doors on 3 of its sides. The hall was usually kept empty to maximize the amount of people it could hold, but today, however, the entire hall had been turned into a makeshift camp. When Maximus and the others arrived, they were greeted by a hall fully packed with people. The floors were covered with endless rows of sleeping bags. Food was being served in corner stalls, with long lines of people waiting to be served. There were lines leading to outside the halls as well, to where the restrooms were. All around them, people were moving about or finding beds for themselves. Some were huddled up together, others seemed as lost as they were. There were a few soldiers in uniform moving between the crowd, keeping the peace. Find yourself a place to sleep and stay within the hall. These are your quarters till the war ends, one of the soldiers told them as they entered. So that's what they did. They scurried around like lost deer until they found 4 sleeping bags close to each other and dropped their luggage near it. Well, this is different, Hedger said, sitting on his bag. Don't know what good this will do me, though. Hedger, being a sprite, was not used to sleeping on the ground. He usually slept upside down on his tail like a bat, but that did not seem possible in the hall. We might not be sleeping at all by the looks of it, Rex said. He was right. All around them, they were greeted with glares. People murmured and stared as they passed, and no one seemed happy about it. A group of elves 2 bags away had shifted away on seeing them arrive. Maximus was really starting to miss the West Tower. Prison or not, he did not have to worry about people trying to kill him in his sleep there. The 4 of them tried to ignore the baleful looks, but it was getting harder by the second. A small crowd was gathering around them, and the ones in uniform were eyeing the situation nervously. Rex shifted his bionic hand from his normal claw mode to the hammer mode, which he used for battle. Is that necessary? Max shot at him. I'm sorry, did these people look like they're about to throw you a parade? Rex said. You think drawing a weapon's making things calmer? Max began. Maybe if we just... But Mia stamped him on the foot, cutting him off. Will you 2 stop it? We have enough things to worry about without being at each other's throat, Mia said. Rex snorted angrily at this, then mumbled about getting dinner and left. People gave menacing stares as Rex passed, but no one did anything. No matter how angry they are, they would still think twice before going against a half-mechanical bull monster. You didn't have to kick me, Max grumbled. Well, I couldn't kick Rex. He wouldn't even feel it, Mia retorted. Have you thought about not kicking anyone, maybe? You know your behavior is not very lady. Like, Max responded. Mia's face grew pink at this. She got to her feet angrily and said, And what makes you think I care if you see me as a lady? Before storming off to join Rex in the food queue. What did I say? Max wondered, confused. Hedger put his face on his palm and said, Women are a mystery, my friend. Do you think you could jam your sword to a wall so I could hang on it to sleep? Max just scowled at him. Mia and Rex had returned with 2 bowls each, but instead of goop, they were filled with regular vegetable stew. Though it wasn't very filling, it did taste a lot better than the castle's goop. They had just finished supper when a familiar voice found them. What are you lot doing here? It was Elisha, dressed in full battle gear. She was flanked on either side by 2 guards. We were sent here, Max replied. Sure, Elisha did not look at him with loathing as before, but she still wasn't happy to see them. Great, as if I didn't have enough problems to deal with here already, Elisha said. Ma'am, they are under the direct orders of the goddess, one of the guards beside her said. All the towers are to remain vacated till the end of the war. All of them? Elisha said, surprised. Well, that's just more work for us. Anyway, move these 4 to a corner where they don't attract as much attention. Make it quick before the crowd gets in the mood for beef and pigeon soup. Rex got up angry at these words, but Elisha grabbed him by his one remaining horn and brought his snout near her face. Now listen to me, Minotaur. I'm the one in command here. So when I give an order, I expect you to follow it. You got me, soldier? She let go of Rex, then turned to the whole group and said, And in here, I'm the only friend you got. It was the 2nd day of war, and none of them felt rested, least of all Hedger, who had tried to sleep curled up into a ball on the ground. The morning was no better. People still glared at them as they passed, and some had escalated to taunts and swearing. They tried for the most part to ignore everyone, but it was getting harder and harder, especially with the rumors of the war outside. News from the outside traveled fast through the hall, and Elisha hadn't been kidding. She was the only one helping Max and his friends in here. She moved them to the least populated corner of the hall, and even put a couple of soldiers on guard detail as well. She also kept them informed on what was happening outside whenever she could, and Max also overheard other things from the crowd. If he didn't know any better, he would say even his hearing had improved drastically. The 2nd day of war had been even more brutal, with Ares sending an even bigger host into battle. Theseus had held his post, but just barely. Luckily, the RAM tanks were still being held back by the cannon fire from the city, but Mars had begun a counter to that. Their long-range units had started firing smoke bombs at the Aegis wall, blocking the line of sight of the cannons. Maximus had no doubt Deimos was behind this. Of all the commanders of Ares, this was more his style. The aerial dogfights had begun as well, with Lady Eris leading the Stymphalian riders into battle. But the bronze-beaked birds proved to be no match for Icarus and his jetpack unit. The 8th Legion's helicopters and jetpacks had pushed the ROC troops back with terrifying efficiency, and all thanks to their leader, Icarus, who rumors told had been fighting like a man possessed after hearing about the death of his father. It seemed Icarus had managed to dismount Eris single-handed, forcing her and her troops to retreat. The battles had ended at sundown again with Athens the victor, but their ranks thinned by the battle. "I have a question," Mia said. It was their 5th day in the hall, and 4 of them were huddled together around their sleeping bags in their corner. The crowd had lessened since when they first arrived, and most of the civilians had been evacuated by the morning. But the hall was still full. Those that remained were all those that would be helping with the war in the background, and none of them were any happier with Max and the others in anyway. So if the Aegis Wall is impenetrable, why doesn't Athena just keep her forces inside it and attack from within? Why meet on the battlefield at all? Mia asked the others. Because it isn't that simple, Rex replied. If Ares is not confronted in the field, his forces would surround the city and start laying a siege. Then it's only a matter of time before Athens is taken. Rex is right, Maximus explained. If Athens is surrounded, then they would cut off all transportation in and out of the city. That would mean no more supply of food and ammunition. There are no farms within the city. Ares would just have to wait and starve us out. Not to mention they would probably send troops after the civilians running south, Rex added. It's a bit more complicated than that, Hedger chipped in, looking up from his electronic reader. The e-reader was a gift from Daedalus to replace the phone he had broken. Seeing his newfound interest in the castle library, the old inventor had thought that a reader suited the sprite more. Hedger had converted and downloaded hundreds of books into it, which at least kept him busy. The Aegis Wall is impenetrable as long as it stands, but it is still an energy barrier. I read in a book that if all the energy gets dissipated from continuous attacks, it would fall. Though it's going to take something phenomenally large to do that, Hedger said. Max nodded to this. He already knew this. Yeah, plus the Aegis Wall is even stronger now. All the energy from the city is being fueled into the wall. That's why all the remaining people are being held together in halls like these to save power. Guess that's why they had to shut down the brick and goop machines as well, Mia figured, though she was not disappointed about that. Hold on, when did you turn into such an expert on all this? She asked Max. Elisha told me a couple of days back, Max replied. Nice to see the two of you getting along so well, Mia said, and Max felt a touch of annoyance in her tone. It was the 6th day of the war, and the mood within the walls was worse than ever. News had just arrived that Ares had broken through the front line. The ram tanks had made it through, and were currently bombarding the Aegis. Eris and her riders were doing better in the skies as well. Elisha was no longer in the hall. She had been charged with leading a section of the 1st Legion against the ram tanks. There were rumors that Phobos too had entered the battlefield in his monstrous form. Though not very bright, having been trained by Ares himself in the art of combat, he was perhaps Mars's deadliest warrior. Maximus could feel the tension rise within the hall as well. Everywhere he looked, he saw eyes filled with hatred against him. Elisha was not around to protect them either. It was supper time again, and the 4 of them were waiting in queue again, careful not to make any eye contact. All around them they were greeted with disdain, and few were quite verbal with their feelings, but the 4 of them ignored all of it dutifully. They had received their supper. It was cabbage soup and bread rolls today. They were just heading back when a woman in her late 50s blocked their path. It was clear that the lady had been crying not long before, but right now her face showed hardened resolve as she stared down at Maximus. Excuse me, Maximus began to say, but out of nowhere the woman spit into his bowl. Maximus dropped his bowl in shock, shattering it, and covering his feet in cabbage soup. Everything happened so fast after that. Max was still standing dumbstruck, clutching his bread rolls when the lady began to shout, "You killed my son! You killed my son!" and lunged at Maximus with a small knife. But Max acted fast and grabbed her before the knife made contact. In an act of self-defense, he pushed the lady back, which sent her crashing to the ground. That was when all hell broke loose. The crowd onlooking the fracas went mad with rage upon seeing this. People started throwing their food and other junk at the 4 of them. A young elf charged at Max with a metal pipe, aiming for his head, but what he got instead was Rex's right hoof dig into his chest, sending the youth spiraling away. It was like a full-on riot now. Rex had already changed his hand into hammer mode and was knocking back anyone who got too close. Hedger tried to fly higher as people kept trying to grab him from below. Mia had a small green barrier up, which at least helped block some of the projectiles sent hurling at them. Max's hand went for the hilt of his sword out of habit, but he did not dare draw it. The truth was, he hadn't drawn his blade since the fight at the tournament. Whatever he had done when he faced the Tyros, he had not been in control of it. If he drew his blade now, he did not know what the result would be. These wouldn't even be trained fighters he would be facing, just angry civilians. A few of the soldiers tried to interfere and bring the crowd under control, but not all of them. Some of them watched on or ignored the scene completely. The crowd kept up their aggressive assault until someone from a corner shouted, "Enough!" It was Elisha, and she had just entered through one of the side doors. She was dressed in uniform with her hair tied into a bun, and it was clear from the dirt and blood covering her body that she had just returned from battle, and she also held a new spear in her hand. She stormed through the crow to the center of the mess to where they were. Most of the people backed off on seeing her, but a few did not. One such brave soul tried to get Mia with his wooden cane, only to have Elisha slam his stomach hard with the shaft of her new spear. That got everyone's attention. Do you all feel mighty taking on these four when they are defenseless? Elisha shouted to the crowd. Her rage had made a vein pop on her forehead. If all of you feel so entitled to war, I'll strap a piece of Kevlar on you and send you the battlefield tomorrow. Then we'll see how well you fare. Her words were met with utter silence. The crowd started to slowly disperse away. Elisha escorted the four of them back to their corner, all of whom were covered in blood, sweat, and cabbage soup. Thanks, Mac said when they finally reached their sleeping bags. There's no need. I was just doing my duty, Elisha said. Just survive the night here. Come tomorrow. I'll personally take you to the goddess and find better housing for you lot. This has been a chapter from Book 2 of the new World Odyssey Series, The Legions of Athena. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.